You are making choices right now that feel small, automatic, almost invisible, but somewhere beneath your awareness, every thought you focus on, every emotion you feed, and every reaction you repeat may be collapsing invisible possibilities into physical reality. What if your daily life is not simply happening to you, but responding to the consciousness observing it? Most people wake up believing reality is solid, fixed, predictable, a world made of objects, rules, schedules, responsibilities, and consequences. But quantum physics quietly destroyed that certainty decades ago. Deep beneath the surface of ordinary life, scientists discovered something disturbing. At the smallest measurable levels of existence, matter behaves differently when it is being observed. An electron can exist in multiple possible states at once, until observation forces it into one outcome. This strange phenomenon became known as the observer effect. And ever since that discovery, one terrifying question has haunted scientists, philosophers, and mystics alike. What exactly counts as an observer? Is observation merely measurement, or does consciousness itself participate in the creation of reality? Right now, your brain is filtering millions of pieces of information every second: sounds, colors, emotions, tiny movements, patterns, but your conscious mind only notices a microscopic fraction of it. In other words, your experience of reality is already highly selective. You are not experiencing the world objectively. You are experiencing a filtered version of it. And what you repeatedly observe grows stronger. Neuroscience confirms this through neuroplasticity. The brain physically rewires itself based on repeated focus. Thoughts repeated often become neural highways. Emotions reinforced consistently become automatic patterns. Attention literally changes the structure of your brain. But what if this process goes deeper than biology? What if attention does not simply reshape your mind, but also alters the probabilities surrounding your life? Think carefully about this. Have you ever noticed how certain periods of life seem magnetically connected to a specific emotional state? When you are anxious, problems multiply. When you become deeply focused on fear, strange coincidences appear that reinforce that fear. But when you feel aligned, hopeful, intensely clear, opportunities begin appearing from nowhere. Most people call this coincidence. But coincidence becomes harder to explain when patterns repeat for years. The strange part is not that reality changes. The strange part is that it changes in the direction of sustained observation. Imagine your life as a massive field of invisible probabilities, different futures, different conversations, different emotional timelines, different versions of yourself. Quantum mechanics suggests that before measurement, particles exist in superposition, multiple possible states simultaneously. Spiritually speaking, your future may function the same way. A cloud of possibilities waiting for observation to stabilize them, and your consciousness acts like a spotlight dot where attention goes. Reality hardens. This does not mean magically control the universe like a fantasy movie. That misunderstanding destroys many conversations around consciousness. Reality is far more subtle than that. Consciousness does not behave like a dictator commanding existence. It behaves more like a tuning mechanism, a frequency selector, an invisible filter deciding which probabilities become psychologically, emotionally, and behaviorally real, because your observations change your behavior. Your behavior changes your energy. Your energy changes your decisions, and your decisions alter your future. The process feels mystical only because most of it happens unconsciously. Think about someone trapped in a cycle of failure. They say they want success. They consciously desire change, but internally, they constantly observe themselves as inadequate, broken, unworthy. Every setback becomes proof. Every mistake becomes evidence. Their observation stabilizes an identity. That identity influences behavior. Behavior influences outcome. Outcome reinforces identity. A feedback loop forms. Now imagine another person observing themselves differently, not arrogantly, not delusionally, but consciously. They notice opportunities instead of obstacles. They interpret rejection as redirection. They hold emotional states longer before collapsing into fear. Over time, their reality also changes externally. Both people lived in the same world. Internally, they observed completely different realities into existence. This is why two people can experience the exact same event and leave with entirely different futures. One sees humiliation. The other sees transformation. One sees evidence of limitation. The other sees information. Observation determines meaning. Meaning determines emotional chemistry. Emotional chemistry determines action. And repeated action determines destiny. Quantum consciousness becomes dangerous when you realize how little of your observation is actually intentional. Most people are not consciously observing reality. Reality is observing them. Notifications control attention. Fear controls attention. Algorithms control attention. Social comparison controls attention. Anxiety controls attention. Entire industries compete to hijack human awareness because awareness is power. Wherever collective attention flows, emotional energy follows. And wherever emotional energy concentrates, behavioral momentum forms. You can see this everywhere. Entire populations become psychologically synchronized through repeated observation. Fear spreads faster than viruses because consciousness is contagious. Mood spread, belief spread, expectations spread. Humans unconsciously tune into one another like antennas operating on emotional frequencies. This is why entering certain environments changes your internal state instantly. Some rooms drain you. Some people exhaust you. Some places make you feel strangely heavy without explanation. Others make you feel creative, expanded, alive. Modern psychology explains part of this through mirror neurons and emotional contagion. But ancient spiritual traditions described this phenomenon long before neuroscience existed. They believed consciousness was not isolated inside individual brains. They believed minds interacted constantly through invisible energetic fields, and strangely, modern science may be moving closer to that possibility again. Quantum entanglement revealed that particles separated across enormous distances can remain mysteriously connected. A change in one instantly affects the other. Einstein himself called it spooky action at a distance. Now pause for a moment. What happens if consciousness itself functions relationally? What if human beings are not isolated observers, but interconnected fields influencing one another continuously? Suddenly your daily choices become far more important, because your emotional state affects more than just you. Every time you choose fear over awareness, reaction over observation, unconsciousness over presence, you strengthen certain probabilities inside your life. But every moment of conscious observation interrupts automatic patterns. This is why mindfulness changes people so profoundly. Not because it is relaxing, but because it transforms the observer. Most humans live entirely identified with thoughts and emotions. They do not observe anger, they become anger. They do not witness fear, they become fear. And whatever identity consciousness fuses with begins shaping reality automatically. But the moment you observe a thought without immediately becoming it, something changes, space appears, freedom appears. You stop feeding the emotional momentum. For thousands of years, spiritual traditions describe this as awakening, the realization that awareness itself exists beyond mental activity, that there is a silent observer behind every thought, emotion, memory, and reaction. And this observer changes reality simply through conscious presence. Imagine anger arising inside you. Normally, anger controls behavior automatically. Tone changes, breathing changes, perception narrows, reality becomes distorted. But if you suddenly become aware of the anger while it is happening, deeply aware, the emotional structure weakens. The observation itself transforms the experience. The observed changes under awareness. Exactly like the quantum experiment. Maybe this parallel is metaphorical. Maybe it is literal. Either way, the consequences are real. Most people never consciously choose what they observe. Their minds are programmed by repetition. They wake up and immediately observe stress, problems, chaos, fear, comparison, lack. Their consciousness becomes trapped in survival mode. Then they wonder why life feels emotionally repetitive. But your mind works like a prediction machine. It searches for evidence, matching your dominant observation patterns. If you expect betrayal, your brain notices betrayal everywhere. If you expect rejection, your nervous system prepares for rejection constantly. If you expect possibility, your perception changes accordingly. The external world may not instantly reorganize itself overnight, but your interaction with reality absolutely transforms, and over time, transformed interaction creates transformed life conditions. This is why tiny daily choices matter so much. The choice to pause before reacting, the choice to observe a thought instead of obeying it. The choice to direct attention intentionally, the choice to feed possibility instead of fear. Small observations create massive timelines, because consciousness compounds. Imagine standing at the center of countless invisible futures every single day. Most people unconsciously collapse the same emotional reality repeatedly because their observation habits never change. Same fears, same assumptions, same reactions, same internal identity. Different years. Same observer, same outcome. But the moment the observer changes, reality begins reorganizing itself around new perception. Not instantly. Not magically. But inevitably, because every future version of your life begins first as a repeated internal observation. And the terrifying truth is this: you are already shaping reality, whether you realize it or not. The only question is whether you are doing it consciously. Look closely at your daily routine, and you will notice something unsettling. Most of your life is not driven by conscious choice. It is driven by automatic observation patterns, repeating themselves over and over again like invisible programming. You wake up expecting certain emotions, certain disappointments, certain limitations, and your nervous system immediately begins searching for evidence to confirm them. This process happens so fast that most people mistake it for reality itself. But reality and perception are not identical. Your brain does not show you the world objectively. It constructs an internal simulation based on what it believes is important. Scientists estimate that the human brain processes billions of bits of information every second, yet conscious awareness only perceives a tiny fraction. The reticular activating system, the filtering mechanism inside your brain, decides what enters conscious awareness based largely on repeated focus and emotional significance. In other words, your attention programs perception. This explains why people suddenly start seeing a specific car model everywhere, either thinking about buying it. The cars were always there. Consciousness simply tuned into them. The external world did not suddenly change. The observer changed. Now imagine this effect operating not just with cars, but with opportunities, relationships, emotions, fears, possibilities, and identity itself. Your dominant observation patterns determine what becomes psychologically visible, and what becomes visible influences action. Action influences outcomes. Outcomes reinforce identity. Again and again, the cycle repeats. Most people never escape this loop because they believe thoughts are passive, harmless, temporary. But thoughts repeated consistently become perception filters. Perception filters become emotional realities. Emotional realities become behavioral patterns, and behavioral patterns eventually shape physical life conditions. This is why individuals living in nearly identical environments can experience completely different realities. One sees only obstacles, the other sees hidden openings. One notices disrespect everywhere. The other notices human pain beneath aggression. One collapses emotionally under pressure. The other becomes more conscious under pressure. Their external circumstances may appear similar, but internally they inhabit different worlds, and the observer inside them determines which world solidifies over time. Ancient mystics often described reality as dreamlike, not because the physical world is fake, but because consciousness participates in shaping experience more deeply than most people realize. Modern neuroscience unintentionally echoes this idea. Your sensory experience is not direct reality. It is a reconstruction generated inside the brain. Colors, sounds, emotional meanings, all interpreted internally. You never experience reality directly. You experience your nervous system's interpretation of reality. That interpretation is heavily influenced by repeated observation. This is why unresolved fear becomes so dangerous. Fear narrows observation. It reduces possibilities. A frightened mind stops perceiving opportunities because survival mode prioritizes threat detection. The body floods with stress hormones. Attention contracts. Creativity weakens. Perception becomes selective. Over time, the individual unconsciously builds a reality consistent with fear. And then comes the tragic illusion, because the fearful person now sees external evidence validating their internal state. They conclude the fear was always justified. But what if their observation helped create the conditions they feared? Not through magic. Through perception, energy, behavior, and unconscious decision-making. This is why awareness changes everything. Awareness interrupts automatic collapse. Imagine standing in the middle of an emotional storm. Anxiety rises. Your chest tightens. Thoughts accelerate. Normally, the unconscious mind fuses with the emotion instantly. I am anxious. I am overwhelmed. I am failing. But conscious observation creates separation. Instead of becoming the anxiety, you witness it. You notice the breathing pattern. You notice the mental narratives. You notice the bodily sensations, and strangely, the emotion begins changing under observation. Not disappearing completely, but weakening. Loosening. Transforming. Why? Because unconscious emotional momentum depends on identification. The observer dissolves automatic fusion. This may be one of the deepest hidden powers of consciousness, the ability not merely to think, but to observe thinking itself. The moment awareness becomes stronger than reaction, reality begins reorganizing. This is why meditation has such profound neurological effects. Brain scans reveal long-term meditators physically reshape neural pathways associated with stress, emotional regulation, empathy, and attention control. Conscious observation literally changes the brain, but spiritually, the implications go even further, because the observer may exist beyond the brain itself. Across countless spiritual traditions, there exists the recurring idea that consciousness is fundamental, not secondary, that awareness is not produced by matter, but expressed through it. If this possibility is true, then your attention is not merely psychological, it is participatory. The universe becomes interactive, responsive, dynamic, not mechanically alive like a machine, but relationally alive through observation itself. This idea terrifies some people because it introduces responsibility. If your observation patterns influence your experience of reality, then unconsciousness becomes costly, victimhood becomes addictive, negativity becomes self-reinforcing, and every repeated emotional state acts like a vote cast toward a particular future. Most people underestimate how often they unconsciously rehearse negative realities. They imagine rejection before conversations happen. They replay failures repeatedly. They mentally simulate disaster constantly, and the nervous system responds as if those imagined realities are already occurring. The body cannot fully distinguish vividly imagined experiences from real ones, which means imagined observation still changes biology. Stress hormones rise, breathing changes, muscles tighten, neural pathways strengthen. The imagined future begins shaping present physiology. Now think about the implications of this over years. An entire lifetime shaped by unconscious emotional rehearsal. This is why intentional observation matters so deeply. Not toxic positivity, why not denial, not pretending pain does not exist. True conscious observation means witnessing reality clearly without becoming enslaved by automatic interpretation. It means learning To sit inside uncertainty without collapsing instantly into fear. It means directing attention deliberately instead of compulsively. And, perhaps most importantly, it means realizing that every moment of awareness changes the observer itself, because consciousness evolves through observation. Every time you become aware of an unconscious pattern, the pattern loses part of its power. Awareness exposes mechanisms hidden in darkness. Suddenly you notice how often your mind predicts failure, how often you seek external validation, how often fear shapes conversations before they even happen. This realization can feel uncomfortable at first, painful even, because you begin seeing how much of your life has been unconsciously automated. But this discomfort is actually the beginning of freedom. You cannot transform what you refuse to observe, and most people spend entire lives avoiding inner observation because silence reveals uncomfortable truths. The moment external distractions disappear, hidden emotions surface: fear, loneliness, insecurity, grief, shame, restlessness. So people keep consuming, scrolling, reacting, distracting themselves endlessly, because distraction protects unconsciousness, but awareness dismantles illusion. The deeper you observe yourself, the more clearly you recognize that many of your reactions were never truly you. They were conditioning, survival adaptations, emotional echoes from past experiences, learned patterns inherited from family, culture, trauma, and repetition. And once observed consciously, they can change. This is where quantum consciousness becomes practical rather than theoretical. Every conscious moment creates the possibility of interruption, a different response, different emotional trajectory, a different future. Imagine how many timelines exist inside a single day. One angry sentence changes a relationship. One moment of patience prevents conflict. One decision to stay conscious instead of reactive alters years of consequences. Micro choices create macro realities, and the observer exists at the center of every choice. The frightening part is that most humans never truly observe themselves long enough to reclaim that power. They remain hypnotized by automatic thought loops. But you are different the moment you begin witnessing the process. Because conscious observation destabilizes unconscious programming, and once the observer awakens, reality never feels entirely solid again. There is a moment that happens quietly in every human life, though most people never recognize it while it is happening. A moment when consciousness stops reacting automatically and begins watching itself. A moment when you suddenly realize that your thoughts are not permanent truths, your emotions are not absolute commands, your fears are not prophecies, they are experiences passing through awareness. And in that realization, something extraordinary begins. You separate from the program. For most of human history, people believed reality was something external and fixed, a world happening independently, while consciousness simply watched passively from inside the skull. But the deeper science digs into matter itself, the stranger reality becomes. Solid objects dissolve into vibrating probabilities. Time behaves inconsistently. Observation affects outcomes. Space itself bends. Certainty disappears. At the deepest measurable levels of existence, the universe behaves less like a machine and more like a field of dynamic relationships, and consciousness may be woven directly into that field. This possibility changes everything. Because if awareness participates in reality, then your inner state is not isolated from the external world. Every perception becomes interactive. Every emotional pattern becomes influential. Every repeated observation subtly shapes the world you experience, not all at once, not like fantasy, but continuously, moment by moment. Choice by choice. Thought by thought. Most people wait for giant transformations, dramatic breakthroughs, sudden miracles. But reality usually shifts through microscopic adjustments repeated consistently over time. Tiny observations, tiny reactions, tiny emotional decisions. These seem insignificant individually, yet together they construct entire identities and futures. This is why daily consciousness matters more than occasional inspiration. A person may spend 1 hour visualizing success, then spend the next 16 hours unconsciously rehearsing fear, doubt, comparison, resentment, and limitation. Which observation pattern do you think becomes dominant? The nervous system obeys repetition. Reality responds to sustained states. And sustained states become personality. This is why transformation cannot happen through information alone. It requires embodied observation, presence, awareness practiced repeatedly until consciousness becomes stronger than conditioning. Imagine waking tomorrow morning and becoming intensely aware of every automatic emotional reaction throughout your day, every irritation, every fear, every self-critical thought, every unconscious assumption. Most people would be shocked by how repetitive their internal reality actually is. The same emotional loops replay endlessly, and those loops create predictability, not only psychologically, but behaviorally. The future becomes easier to predict when consciousness remains unconscious, because unconscious minds repeat familiar patterns. Awakened observation interrupts them. This is why true mindfulness can feel uncomfortable initially. It exposes the machinery beneath identity. You begin noticing how often your emotions are triggered externally, how dependent your internal state has become on circumstances, opinions, notifications, and outcomes. But slowly, awareness changes the relationship. Instead of drowning inside emotional weather, you begin observing weather patterns passing through consciousness. You stop asking, "How do I eliminate negative thoughts forever?" and you begin asking a far more powerful question: who is the one observing these thoughts? This question changes everything because it redirects attention away from mental content and toward awareness itself. Thoughts come and go. Emotions rise and fall, sensations appear and disappear, but awareness remains. Silent. Watching. Present. Many spiritual traditions believed this. Observing awareness was humanity's deepest nature, not the ego, not personality, not memory, pure consciousness itself, a field of witnessing intelligence behind experience. Modern science cannot fully explain consciousness yet. In fact, consciousness remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in existence. Neuroscience can identify correlations between brain activity and subjective experience, but it still cannot explain why awareness exists at all. Why does matter become conscious? Why should atoms arranged in a certain biological structure suddenly produce subjective experience? No one truly knows. And in that mystery, the ancient question returns again. Is consciousness emerging from the universe? Or is the universe emerging through consciousness? You can feel the weight of this question if you sit with it long enough, because if reality is participatory, then every unconscious reaction becomes significant. Every repeated fear strengthens certain probabilities. Every intentional act of awareness opens new possibilities. Consciousness itself becomes creative, not because humans are gods controlling existence, but because observation participates in shaping experience. You already know this intuitively. Think about entering a room after people argued violently moments earlier. No words are needed. You feel the emotional atmosphere instantly. Human beings constantly influence each other through subtle energetic communication, body language, tone, nervous system synchronization, emotional projection. Consciousness radiates, and unconsciousness spreads just as powerfully. This is why protecting attention has become one of the most important survival skills of modern life, because whatever repeatedly captures awareness begins shaping identity. Fear-based media. Endless outrage, constant comparison. Digital overstimulation. These do not merely entertain the mind, they condition perception. And conditioned perception influences reality. A consciousness trapped in chronic distraction loses the ability to observe deeply. Attention fragments, presence weakens, the observer falls asleep inside endless stimulation. But awakening the observer changes perception, dramatically. Suddenly ordinary moments become alive. Again, breathing becomes noticeable, thoughts become observable, emotions become workable, life slows down internally. And within that slowness, conscious choice returns. This is where true power begins. Not domination over the universe, not supernatural control, but mastery over observation itself. The ability to consciously choose what receives sustained attention, the ability to witness fear without feeding it, the ability to remain aware inside emotional storms, the ability to hold possibility in the mind longer than limitation. Most people never develop this skill because unconsciousness feels easier. Reacting automatically requires no awareness. Presence requires energy, discipline, stillness, honesty, because conscious observation eventually forces you to confront yourself completely, not the edited version. Not the social mask, the real internal landscape, the fears you hide, the wounds you avoid. The emotional addictions you repeat, the stories you continuously reinforce. And strangely, this confrontation becomes liberation, because once awareness illuminates unconscious patterns, they lose some of their invisible control. You begin recognizing how often you emotionally rehearse failure before attempting something meaningful, how often you abandon opportunities because your nervous system associates uncertainty with danger, how often you collapse possibility prematurely through fear-based observation. And once seen clearly, these mechanisms can change, not instantly, but progressively. Every conscious interruption weakens old pathways. Every moment of awareness strengthens new ones. Every intentional observation reshapes identity. This is why your smallest choices matter more than you think. The way you speak to yourself internally, the emotional states you repeatedly rehearse, the information you consume daily. The thoughts you identify with. The meanings you assign to experiences. These become the architecture of reality over time. Because the observer is never separate from the experience, you are participating in the construction of your world continuously through perception. And perhaps the greatest hidden truth is this: the universe may not simply be a place you live inside. It may be a living process becoming aware of itself through you. Every thought. Every emotion, every observation, every conscious moment, the cosmos looking back at itself through human eyes. So tomorrow morning, when reality begins forming itself around your attention once again, pause for a moment before the automatic patterns return, before fear chooses your focus, before unconsciousness takes control. And ask yourself carefully, what reality am I observing into existence today?